This is Real News Media TV, coverage you can trust. Please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Select all for daily news updates. Police name person of interest in $600 million Montego Bay narco bust and confirmed the charges against the businessman. The St. James Police have named Presley Bingham, otherwise called Presso, as a person of interest in the $600 million cash and drugs seizure in the parish last week. Bingham is of a Torado Drive address in St. James. He's been urged to immediately report to the Narcotics Division at 230 Spanish Town Road, Kingston 11, to facilitate the investigations. The police released the name in a statement yesterday evening. The Jamaica Constabulary Force also confirmed earlier reports that Oral Johnson, the businessman, whose arrest led cops to the massive drugs and cash seizure, was charged with possession of, dealing in, taking steps to export and trafficking cocaine. He was detained on April 26 on reasonable suspicion for breaches of the Dangerous Drugs Act after 24 pounds of cocaine with a street value of $82.5 million was allegedly found in a car he was driving in the Coral Gardens area. Johnson is from Garden District in Westmoreland. The charges were laid after he was interviewed by detectives in the presence of his attorneys. The cocaine seizure led cops to a house reportedly owned and occupied by Bingham in Coral Gardens, where US $3.8 million and a Canadian $30,000, or a total of $592 million, and additional cocaine were seized. A female bartender was also arrested after she was allegedly held with a quantity of ganja during a secondary operation in St. Elizabeth. It's not clear whether Bingham is among the list of 17 persons of interest the St. James Police published on Tuesday. Deputy Superintendent of Police in charge of crime in St. James, Clive Wright, provided details of some of the persons during an interview with the news. Topping the list are David Brown from Catherine Hall, Montego Bay, who is wanted in connection with the weekend killing of his common-law wife, Christy Kitty McBean, 20. Wright and his team are also anxious to find Nikilo Lewis, otherwise called Kilo, who reportedly operates out of the Lilliput area of St. James. He is a person of interest in at least 3 murders which occurred in Lilliput in the month of January, the policeman said. The DSP singled out 2 others. They are Tevon Johnson, also known as Puppy, of a Crawford Street, Mount Salem address, who allegedly engaged the police in a gunfight last month, and Kenroy Roach of Springmount, St. James, who is wanted for a murder committed in the parish last year. Wright said the police conducted several operations in communities linked to the wanted persons, but without any success. He is calling on the communities to alert the police whenever the men are seen in the area. The information we have received indicates that these persons are still operating within their home communities. However, they are eluding the police, DSP Wright said. Ex-Senator Paul Miller dies. Former People's National Party Senator Paul Miller has been hailed in his death as a patriot and a passionate youth and a community advocate. Miller died at hospital on Tuesday after complaining of feeling unwell. Maxine Henry Wilson, former PNP General Secretary and a cabinet minister, said he played a seminal role in the development of the youth movement in the late 1960s. He built a very robust set of community-based youth organizations. The Sixth Form Association, for example, which was very vocal during the 1960 to 1972 period, was a group he worked very hard to create, Henry Wilson said. Miller was the Parliamentary Secretary for Youth and Community Development, under whose tenure the National Youth Service was developed in 1973. Another former PNP General Secretary, Paul Burke, met Miller in the early 1970s. He recalled the late advocate's agitation for voter rights. He was the president of the Jamaica Youth Council. They vigorously protested all the way up to February 1972 about the fact that young people were disenfranchised from voting, Burke said in a news interview on Wednesday. For that 1972 election, no one under 24 could vote, even though the prescribed voting age was 21, and the Jamaica Youth Council was very active in exposing and protesting it. He said Miller was active in the PNP until the 1990s, not necessarily in a leadership capacity but on assignments. He was a very pleasant, casual, easy to get along with person. He was liked throughout the party and was someone who was generally agreeable, and certainly he was progressive in his speech and action, Burke said. Miller was also very active in the church and was also chairman of the United Churches Education Commission. He leaves behind a widow Kimorine and 3 children. Terry Long and Holness spar over using CDF to increase constituency assistants' salaries. Member of Parliament for St. Catherine East Central, Alonda Terry Long, is demanding a salary hike for executive assistants assigned to constituencies, claiming they are not being paid enough for their hard-working efforts. Terry Long aired his concerns during the sitting of the Constituency Development Fund Committee on Wednesday, where the funding of several projects for constituencies were approved. He said assistants have been receiving an annual income of $1.5 million annually since 2016, but the economic value has largely reduced. If you are going to run a constituency as effectively as I have run East Central St. Catherine, you need a good admin. I do believe that we must pay people what they deserve, even if we got an extra $500,000 to bring up their salary, said Terry Long. I feel completely inept sitting here, knowing that an office administrator who I depend on to help me to run a constituency, it is not easy for any member of parliament if you are going to be a good MP and you are paying an office admin who is working $1.5 million. If it is that proposal can be made to the Ministry of Finance, then I think in all seriousness we should, he said. But committee chairman and a member of parliament for St. Andrew East Rural, Juliet Holness, disagreed with Terry Long, noting that the salary is sufficient. I do not empathize or sympathize as $1.5 million is a reasonable amount to pay an administrative assistant, and you can look forward to raising funds outside of the government to supplement the assistant, Holness argued. I cannot take $1.5 million out of my $20 million. I do not have and have never had an administrative assistant. I find it very hard to manage East Rural St. Andrew without that $1.5 million, but if I take $1.5 million, I don't know what I am going to do in terms of funding the projects in the constituency, she added. The CDF, when introduced in 2008, saw $40 million being allocated per constituency. That allotment was, however, later reduced to $20 million a year, only to be further reduced to $15 million in 2010. It remained at that level until 2016, when it was restored to $20 million. As members of parliament, it is very unfortunate. Have the people know that our burden is heavy. We have to be begging donations, we have to be doing fundraising because we are not getting enough from CDF to be able to manage our constituencies, and every year we come, every year we ask for more, but we do not get any more, said Holness. Holness is recommending the executive assistant to be paid $2 million outside of the $20 million CDF allocation. She also recommended the retaining of CDF officers who have received quality training from the government. The CDF approved 109 projects to be done at approximately $241 million. MPs each to get $1.5 million to help poor constituents. Social Security Minister Carl Samuda has announced that $1.5 million is to be made available immediately to each member of parliament to help poor constituents. He told the House of Representatives on Wednesday afternoon that sums under the Special Allocation for Short-Term Poverty Intervention Program are typically paid in tranches. However, he said given the struggles faced by many currently, it was decided to make the entire amount available immediately since the government was in a position to do so.
Over the period of the next few months, each member of parliament can choose how they wish to identify the recipients, but they can be assured that we will be monitoring the situation at the level of the social workers to ensure that the program runs as usual quite smoothly. So we are effectively immediately placing at the disposal of every member of parliament $1.5 million towards this particular activity. And I think that it is a period when people are in need, and so we felt that instead of delaying it, that we would do it as we are in a position so to do.
Low uptake of incentive to encourage formal banking. There has been a low uptake of the incentive announced by Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark in March to get more Jamaicans into the formal banking system. The Finance Minister had announced that $2,500 would be deposited into the accounts of up to 100,000 people who open certain bank accounts. While unable to provide figures, Financial Secretary Darlene Morrison on Wednesday told the Parliament's Public Administration and Appropriations Committee that the number of people accepting the offer was below expectation. But she said the ministry has already released the payments to people who signed up.
On the low KYC, that take-up has not been as quick. I'll give you that figure in a while. However, in terms of the payments, the information has been provided to us and we have disbursed to the Bank of Jamaica, who will then pass this to the relevant banks. I can't definitively say that the money is in the bank accounts, but the government has disbursed.
Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Select all for daily news updates.